Hello, my friends, and welcome to the end. Not of the show, you sillies. I've still got a number of games to attempt to defend before that happens. No, I'm talking about the end of LJN as a company. It's been 20 years now since the Rainbow went bust. Their output as a publisher failed to extend past the early Nintendo systems and handheld, with one exception for the Sega Dreamcast of all consoles. Spirit of Speed 1937. Spirit of Speed 1937 was released on July 31st, 2000. 2000? Didn't LJN go out of business in 1995? How could they put this out 5 years later? There's no definitive answer to that question, but I believe that Acclaim, the owner of LJN, was the true publisher of this heavily panned racer. They briefly resurrected the LJN brand in order to distribute it without facing the inevitable critical backlash. Of course, as I mentioned before, this is merely speculation. After all, it clearly states that it was distributed by Acclaim when the disc loads up, and the Japanese version has the Acclaim logo front and center. However, the fact remains that their logo doesn't appear anywhere on the American and European box art. There must have been some reason that they revived LJN in name only for this one title. I would assume that it was due to the strict publishing limitations which led to LJN being acquired by Acclaim in the first place, but I believe those were long removed at that point. All the evidence suggests that the most likely cause was embarrassment over a shoddy product. Again though, this is purely speculation, and I can't prove this one way or another. Regardless, what is known about this Dreamcast oddity is that it was developed by Broadsword Interactive. Spirit of Speed was Broadsword's debut effort, and in spite of its hugely negative reception, they managed to continue working in the industry until the late 2000s. Broadsword certainly wanted to impress right out of the gate. I'm assuming that 90% of the budget went into that animation, because this is the most impressive part of Spirit of Speed 1937. LJN doesn't get the same treatment, sadly. The familiar symbol pops up without any special effects or fanfare. It was more than likely slapped on last minute, providing further evidence to my aforementioned theory. On a positive note, Spirit of Speed offers multiple language options so international gamers can join right in on the, fun. The language menu leads into the intro cinematic, which is accompanied by era-appropriate music and replicates the style of a well-worn film projector. This is pretty good and captures the 30s vibe, so kudos Broadsword. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to negate that compliment over the ridiculously long loading times. Check this out! I'm a patient guy, but having to wait nearly a minute to get to the main menu seems excessive to me. I know for a fact that the Dreamcast is better than that, so Broadsword must be the culprit. It's inexcusable. In Spirit of Speed's defense, I will say that it has a respectable amount of options. While it only presents a single-player experience, there are 4 main modes: Quick and Single Races, Scenario, and Championship. The Quick and Single Races further offer access to 9 circuits and over 10 vehicles, including Alfa Romeo, Bugatti, and Mercedes-Benz models. Each can be set to automatic or manual shifting, except in Scenario and Championship, where the car and course are predetermined. I started my session with the Scenario mode, and the results were disappointing, to say the least. On the plus side, there are a multitude of unique scenarios for every difficulty setting. They all have fancy descriptions, but the same basic goal is shared in common. Simply get in first or as close to first as possible, but achieving this task is far from simple, even on the lower difficulty settings. This is partly due to the rude and ravenous AI, but the root cause is the controls and the clunky conveyances that we get behind the wheel of. The control scheme itself isn't that complicated. The analog stick steers the vehicle, the right trigger increases the speed, and the left trigger brakes. Raising and lowering gears is accomplished by A and X respectively. B scrolls for the camera views, and Y accesses the rear view mirror. The controls aren't perfect, but they were only a small part of the problem. The handling of the cars is the biggest offender. The turning is slow and stiff, with no ability to drift whatsoever. I can't tell you how many times I ran into a wall while attempting to turn, but it was a lot. It probably doesn't help that I'm not that good at driving games, but I wasn't able to win a single race. Hell, I was barely able to finish any of them. I know these are supposed to be respected classic vehicles, but they all seem to handle awfully. No matter which I chose, it would usually become damaged and catch on fire, taking me out of the competition. I later discovered that there was a pit stop section that I was missing out on where the tires, fuel, and oil can be repaired and refilled, but this was more of a hindrance than a help. While my performance was never great to begin with, I found that it became worse after learning about the pits because I was preoccupied with keeping the vehicle in decent shape. If it wasn't burnouts, it was race overs, and I got incredibly fed up with it. Interestingly enough, the manual actually justifies the poor controls. The manual claims that this is basically a simulator of old school racing. Apparently, the handling back then was primitive, so Broadsword programmed the game's maneuvering to be equally primitive in order to create an authentic experience. I'll give them credit for that. Not many developers would purposefully program their project shoddily for a reason such as that. Of course, it could be total BS, and they use that as an excuse to explain why their product was so mediocre, but again, that's just speculation. The controls and handling are a huge buzzkill, but there are other factors that earn this a 1.77 on GameFAQs. The majority of the tracks feel and look the same. I lost count of how many times I drove through a rural environment, but nearly the entire initial hour of capturing footage was spent doing just that. The tediousness grew with each passing minute, and even as someone with a high tolerance for bad games, I found absolutely no fun in this. Sure, there are some decent tracks, such as the Montana and Brooklands Ovals, but more often than not, they were too long or too complicated. POW especially was a nightmare since it's very twisty and easy to get lost in. It's funny that the quick races that I tried out lasted over 9 minutes before I was even on the last lap. It may have speed in its title, but there is nothing speedy about Spirit of Speed. It's sluggish and littered with frame rate issues and other glitches. There may be 4 playable options, but there's not enough variety to distinguish them. They have the same cars and circuits, pick one and drive, that's it. Championship and Scenario are similar in that there's a series of pre-selected routes and we have no say in what can and can't be driven. Play by Broadsword's rules or get out, I suppose. All of this is painting a pretty ugly picture, but there's one cardinal sin that Spirit of Speed committed that I believe is the worst of all. You might have noticed something by now about the footage that I've shown. If there's one thing that can elevate a bad game, it's an energetic soundtrack, and Spirit of Speed soundtrack is... well, it's non-existent. The only music to be heard is the roar of the engines. This void wore on me during my capture session, and I probably would have gone bonkers if it wasn't for the podcast I was listening to. This isn't so bad that it's good, this is just bad. It's well below average in comparison to other titles in the genre, and it never feels fast once in spite of its name. It's a shame that LJN had to go out on such a low note, even if it was in name only. If this counts as part of the LJN catalog, then it is the absolute worst product that contains the rainbow on it. I think I made it perfectly clear what my opinion is of LJN's last hurrah. Spirit of Speed 1937 truly is an abomination. I'll admit that I'm not really a fan of the racing genre, and it's possible that my failure could partly be due to my lack of skills, but I'm sure that driving wizards would feel the exact way that I do. In fact, they'd probably be more insulted by it. It's obvious that Acclaim wanted nothing to do with this. They realized how poor it was, but they still wanted to release it and make some kind of profit off of it, so LJN became the perfect scapegoat. Spirit of Speed 1937 is one malign title that rightfully earns its reputation. I can't recommend it at all. This is enough to literally drive someone crazy, so play at your own risk. So long, LJN. You deserve better than this. I'm glad that I changed my mind about leaving this for the final episode. The LJN Defender can't end on such a down note. Fortunately, the rainbow still has some gold at the end of it, so that dour finale doesn't have to happen. That's at least a couple years away, though. For now, I need a Cygnus Destroyer palette cleanser after this lackluster mess. Come back next week for that, but until then, this is Matt, aka the LJN Defender, signing out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Come back next week for another Cygnus Destroyer review, but until then, you can check out these videos on the screen right now. On the upper left-hand corner, that is last week's Innocent Till Proven Guilty on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time Reshell, the infamous remake. A lot of people say it's pretty bad, but what do I think about it? Well, you can find out on that video right there, so click on that upper left-hand box and you'll find out. It's a really enjoyable video, so check it out. Now, on the upper right-hand corner, that is the Cygnus Destroyer review of Worm Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's an NES game. I enjoy it. It's a really, it's a hidden gem. It's a really good game, and I just figured I would link that one just for the hay of it, because hey, it was a fun review to make, and it's a really good game, and I want to spread the word about that game more, so check that out. On the bottom left-hand corner, that is just as a reminder that LJN does produce decent games. That is the LJN Defender on Incredible Crash Dummies for the Super Nintendo. So check that out from earlier in the year. I get really silly in it, so check that out. And, there's the beard. Hey, the beard's cool. Beard will be coming back, relatively soon. So, yeah, check that out. And as always, for anybody who's new to the channel, if you like what you saw and you want to see more, click that red box right there, and that'll subscribe you to the channel, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all my current content. So like I said before, come back next week for another Cygnus Destroyer review, but until then, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!